Hello, welcome to the new setup. Welcome to a new place, new house, new vibes. I think the lighting here is actually kind of good. I know that there's this big bright spot right here. But I don't know. I don't mind it. So don't look over there. Look, if I hold my books over it, they they glow. They shine in the light. Um, this is the first one we're going to talk about. But before I do, actually, that's gonna be the last book we talk about. I'm gonna swap it up. That's coming last. Putting that on the bottom of the stack. Um, how about we everybody grab your glass of ice with ice in it, as you can see quite clearly. With the lighting behind it shining through. And grab yourself a cool drink. A cool drink. And check this shit out. Check this. Check that pour. Check that pour. There you go. That's it. That's it. Damn, dude. Holy fuck. Um, Diablo 4 just came out. I'm gaming. I'm playing games. That smell like candy. That smell like candy. But you know, there's COVID in the house. Diablo's out. Everything's crazy. I've just started a new job. I haven't been reading as much, so there's only 3 books, but I think they're 3 good books. 3 good books. All right, so let's start with what I was not going to start with, and that is Royal Assassin. Now, this is the middle book of the Farseer trilogy, book 2. I think when I came to you last, I was halfway through. And I'm trying to remember what I had already said, but I'll take from the top. I think at about halfway through, I was kind of feeling a bit bummed out with some of the wit magic, and I still definitely think that is a valid feeling of mine. But also, it was one of those things that it was kind of like trust the process. There's gonna be some parts that are less enjoyable to read, and that is because there needs to be some payoff. And that was the case with the wit magic here. I think because I've these 2 books are fucking massive, and I'm trying to remember what even happens in this book. And I don't want to insult the book, but not that much happens. I really did enjoy it though. I think Robin Hobb is just great. Like the way she writes, her characters, they're incredible. This book is my least favorite of the 3, and I think that's a pretty common opinion. I might be wrong. I like the ending, but I don't see why this was so long. I love this book. I loved it so much. I think it did such great things for the characters and for Fitz, and it was so necessary for this book to be this long and this kind of redundant in a way for the payoffs that we see in book 3, and I'm sure down the line in subsequent books to come. But I think this book really struggled to keep the reader interested. Not interested, sorry, but keep the intense moments, because there is definitely intense moments in this book. I mean, there's quite a decent amount of action during the middle, if I remember correctly. And but it almost feels like like Robin Hobb kind of struggled to make the action feel like, oh, this is super important. This is what's going on. This is lit. And it was more of like, okay, this is just something to kind of give me something to eat while I'm waiting for the actual tea to go down. That's just how I read it. I gave this a 4.5. I probably, now that I'm thinking back on it, probably leaning more towards a 4. And it's not to say that it was bad. I don't know. It's a great book. I look back on it quite fondly, but also I can barely remember what happens. And for me, that is kind of it's kind of not a great sign if I'm looking back on a book. And I know there was so much character development, there was so many meticulous conversations and ruminations and things like that that progressed the story in such a way, and I was really gripped by it. But I'm thinking a 4.5 still, but leaning more towards a 4. I'm not going to change my rating on Goodreads, which is a 5, but just between you and me, I think it's more towards a 4 than it is towards a 5. And I guess that is because I expected, I'm happy with taking a slower break. Book 1 isn't incredibly fast or anything, but I'm like, okay, I'm happy with going a bit slower for book 2. It's Robin Hobb's pacing is weird because there is action in here and there is stuff that happens for sure, but she writes in such a way that it doesn't like glorify or really like doesn't feel like it's always moving. And I think it can even be like just the way that characters and the world are, that even when someone is, there's a lot of action happening, there's always these things that are grounding them, so it feels like it's a very, very slow progression. Like, for instance, Fitz throughout this trilogy, he is very, he stands by his beliefs. What has happened through books 1 and book 2 are just his foundational, that is how he is ruling his life. That's how he's making decisions. This is what he thinks about the world. And he's not making these grand, sweeping changes of his ideas, overnight or between two towns or something like that. He stands by what he believes and he will fucking, die on that hill. And it almost feels like he isn't progressing as a character. We're kind of just watching the same character sit around, and that is what kind of creates, I think, this slow pace, even when the story is picking up and getting exciting, is that these characters aren't just like these magical boxes that shift around and move depending on what the author needs. It's a bit like because I think Robin Hobb with her character arcs and stuff, the arcs are less. If using Brandon Sanderson for instance, right? When he writes characters, he will write an arc for them. He'll be like, well, this guy's going to start as a selfish dad, and he's going to realize he loves his kids, and he's going to sacrifice himself for his kids and be about love instead of war or something like that, right? And it's kind of like you see the point A, you see the point B, and as you go through the books, you're getting there, and where it's headed. How these decisions are going to come about. You can see him, from scene to scene, reflecting on his behavior and making that change. And that's a really great way of writing characters, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great way of writing characters. But Robin Hobb, it doesn't really do that, I don't think. I think she's like, this is this person, this is what they believe, this is their truth, this is their through experience, this is what they know, and this is what they feel, and this is how they're going to react to a situation. And it's less about, I'm going to guide them through this pre-existing idea of, like Fitz grew up without parents, I'm going to make him learn to trust someone older than him by the end of the trilogy or something. Like this very basic, like I'm going to teach him to like found family, and he will love those around him. That's in theory what you would do from the first few chapters of book 1. That's a logical character arc. That's what you would do. and I'm absolutely not saying that Fitz doesn't have a major character arc in this trilogy, but it is so less start and finish than I'm used to or I know from a lot of authors, and it's very true to human nature, I feel like. And so that's kind of book two is very, I think, weighed down by that as well, because obviously that kind of character writing and just writing in general is going to have its drawbacks. And one of them is that you feel sometimes a lack of progression and characters just standing by their beliefs when in normal books or like that change of belief would be what's driving the story. You know, someone being like, actually I do, you know, cherish you as a friend, so let's run away together or whatever, right? Like, so that'll be the catalyst to start the story. But these characters, they don't often ever do that kind of thing. They're like, I grew up trusting you and loving you as a friend, but I have somewhere to be. You know, I have these responsibilities. I must do this thing, and I'm not just gonna make this crazy out of the woods change for you. And those like crazy changes are usually what drives like popular fantasy books, TV shows, that sort of thing, because it is that abrupt change in nature which often drives the narrative. So here I feel like it can get a bit frustrating, characters being like, no, you know, this is what I believe in, I'm not going to change, I'm not going to do that. So you're kind of just like waiting on either these really slow changes to happen or outside powers to come in and influence. And I'll just go straight into, so this book, great, 4.5, great ending. This whole series, like especially the ending of this book, it's very emotionally, it's such an emotional journey, and it's not just like purely sad, you know, it's not just like, oh, it's devastating, it's sad. It's just so meticulous and thought-provoking, and it will linger on these ideas. And I want to talk about book 3 for that. So I'm leaving book 2, my least favorite in the series, but it does a lot of groundwork, which I think has great payoff in book 3. Book 3 is obviously, again, a massive book. I mean, book 2 is even pretty massive. This copy I have is like 750 pages, but I don't know. Book 3 is like another level of massive. I think this is 830 or something. And this book is just so, I don't know. There's a lot going on, and I feel like Robin Hobb writes so unique to a lot of the fantasy that I've read before. It's definitely not typical, you know, Tolkien-esque as far as I feel. Let me have a sip. And I feel like this book really achieves what it set out to do. I said this in my Goodreads review. I don't know if I said it here. I don't know if this will work for everyone. This series can be so frustrating. And you almost just feel like a fly in the room just watching these characters make choices. They could be terrible. They're often terrible. That's a huge critique, and a reason why a lot of people don't like Fitz is because he's stubborn and he makes choices that, you know, aren't necessarily good or whatever. And I feel like that's true, but also, do you not want to read a character that is so nuanced and developed that even when they're making these horrible choices, these like awful choices that you know aren't going to benefit him in any way, you see where it's coming from. You completely understand why someone would make these choices, because, you know, we've had this book, and another book on top to explain why Fitz is the way that he is. And I think this book just does a great job of kind of not finishing that, but just using that build up and just like executing it really, really well. Apologies. But yeah, this book just I think it hits the mark. It's super slow again. It is a quest though, whereas Royal Assassin is mostly just set in one place. They do obviously venture outside of Buckkeep, but it's mostly set there. Whereas this book is, without spoiling too much, obviously, a quest. And so they're not really in Buckkeep. And I think that aspect of it really helped with the narrative and the pacing of it all. That they were going between locations, meeting new people, experiencing the world. I really do love the new characters that were introduced as well. Starling and Kettle, I really, really loved. Starling was a standout character. So amazing. I think it's chapter 30. Stone Garden. If you get around to it, there's a conversation that Starling and Fitz have in chapter 30, Stone Garden, and I don't know. I just think it was one of the most powerful things I've read in fiction. It was so good, and I think that Hobb just wrote it fantastically. I think her understanding of the issues that are contained within that chapter and that conversation were incredible. And yeah, I think it's an amazing chapter, amazing conversation. If you do ever read this book, don't pay close attention, but I feel like just really that, like, I don't know, think about it, understand how insanely just cool that scene is and that conversation is, and what it does for both of their characters is just so crazy. And I don't know, that is definitely my highlight of the book. I really liked the beginning the beginning portion of the chapter as well. I think he's speaking with Fool about stuff, and I really like Fool. I mean, I said that from book one. I love the like character archetype that he fits into. That like weird, mysterious court jester, the really alien presence in the court, that sort of thing is really great. And I think Fool is just a really, really strong character. A really great presence in this novel. And I think that that Fool and Starling are like, one of my favorite parts about this trilogy. I really do enjoy I enjoy Fitz as well, of course. And Fitz and his companion, I do enjoy them, but I think for me, Starling and Fool stand out a bit more as just like personal favorites. But it's hard to really say because, like, with Fitz, I think he, seeing the world from his eyes and experiencing his thoughts on things and his emotions and such is more interesting and impactful than what we see from Fool. But I do prefer Fool and Starling as characters, and I really, really enjoy just Starling's character arc throughout the whole book. And like I said, they're not the Sanderson-esque character arcs where it's like, bad character, good. It's very, very different and nuanced, but I think she is just an incredible force in this novel, and it's almost kind of strange you're reading them and you're like, why is Starling here? Like there becomes a time when there's just kind of, it becomes like a band, like a group of people, and you're with the same characters for quite a long time, and Starling is one of them, and you just think she's such the odd one out in the group when that was kind of formerly full. So there's like two odd one outs now, and just their interactions with one another is great. I think it's amazing. Um, the ending of this book was crazy. I think it was like even up to this point when I was like, what? Like I knew kind of what was gonna happen, but I was like, why are we waiting so long to make it happen? But trust the process. I think she managed to wrap it up really really well. I almost was getting scared. Like, is nothing gonna happen? Like, are we just gonna kind of end it on a cliffhanger and peace out? But she manages to tie up a lot of the not loose ends, but tie up the series. And I think this trilogy as a whole leaves you with more questions than it answers, and it almost feels like a prequel in and of itself. Which I definitely didn't think when I was reading, I was like about here, I was like, if this all resolves as I think it will, what are the next 6 Fitz books going to be about? Or what are the next 13 Realm of the Elderlings books going to be about? But I think she manages to weave in that understanding and intrigue of what's to come really well at the end of this novel. And, I can see it now. And I'm very excited to kind of go forward and see what that brings. But that is the Farseer trilogy, basically. It's great. Not for everyone. I definitely think it's super challenging at times, especially with things like pacing, character motivations, payoff, expectations, the way that the fantasy magical elements work. Like all these things she writes them in a challenging way, so I can definitely understand why they're not working for some people. But I think just having faith in Hobb that they would all pay off, and I feel like they really did. It was a great trilogy, and I cannot wait to see what comes next. I mean, I know it's Ship of Magic, but even just knowing that and having read these books, I'm like, what the fuck is Ship of Magic gonna be about? But we'll find out. Big fan. I am gonna read Realm of the Elderlings, probably the whole thing. I see no reason why I wouldn't. I really enjoyed these books, and yeah. And lastly, the new series that I've started. So finished the trilogy, still going on a series, I guess. But that is Red Rising. I'll go over here. This was good. I liked it. I think it had a ton of potential, which is great because I heard it gets better, and having potential in the first book is a great place to start off from. I think Pierce Brown's writing in this book was a little rough at times. I think the kind of quotes that, I don't know if he expected to pull, like, people to pull out of the book or just to tug people's heartstrings. I think they were just a little too I wrote shitty in my review, but they were just a little awkward and rough. Like they were kind of just like, you say what the theme of it is, or you just like, it's just a quote in the book to tell you exactly what you're supposed to be feeling during these moments. And I feel like that's not as strong for me. Like, say a character will get revenge and they'll be like, yes, revenge. That was all I needed. And it's like, okay, I understand you're getting revenge. You don't need to spell it out for me in these weird quotes that, you're saying. And then I feel like the sentence structure as well, there was a lot of just short sentences like, run, I move, I pull back, I stab, or something, you know, something like that. I'm not direct quoting. I actually think this is in third person. Oh no, it is in first. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Um, but it is like that. I jump, I grab, I start. Like it, I feel like, you know, it's a bit more of finding that balance of when to really bring these sentences to life. I think that it's almost an unfair comparison though, because I've been reading Robin Hobb, who is a fantastic writer. And then to go to someone's debut and be like, you should have the same sentence structure. It's kind of hard. But, you know, these are both first person. These are both young men stories, kind of action-y. So it just did, you know, affect their reading experience. But I thought the world and the story were actually really good. I really do like the world and the way that the story wound itself up and I guess concluded and led on to sequels. I think that was really cool. I think he used that existing idea of what a dystopian world is from like Divergent, Hunger Games, and put like an edge to it that I think is really interesting, pretty unique, while also paying like homage to the originals, if that makes sense. Like not taking it so far away from dystopian that it doesn't really feel like that anymore, but just using those elements to kind of the best of their potential. And I really, really like that. I also feel like, yeah, the book did take itself a little too seriously sometimes. And I think that that goes along with those like quotes that I was talking about before. And I wrote down that I ended up kind of laughing and giggling at some of like the epic, awesome moments that happen more towards the end. And I think because they were written in that kind of like edgelord, self-help, you know, those quotes where it's like, I will bring down this regime kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, I know. I completely know, like show don't tell kind of thing. But I think that's just Pierce Brown. Like, you know, he needs to develop his experience a little bit more. And I've heard a lot of good things about all the next books. So hopefully that is something that he kind of works on. And for like character motivations to show why a character might feel that way or do this thing or achieve this goal, instead of just making it like a quote of theirs or something, just like pushing it really far out into the open. Because I understand that this was kind of it's not really intended for YA audience, but it just kind of has fallen into that bracket. And I think the publisher also kind of wanted that because obviously that sells a bit better, dystopian, yada yada yada. I feel like that kind of writing, you know, works a bit better for a younger audience, just to kind of shoehorn in that, you know, I'm doing this as a revenge plot. And so you're like, okay, this is a revenge plot. But I kind of like when the author has that trust in the reader to know that this event is happening, this character is going to feel this way about it, that is why this action is happening the way that it is because of what you've seen. And I'm not just going to outwardly tell you, like, you know, Fitz is angry, so Fitz is going to say this thing to someone and they're not going to like it. It's like, no, you understand from all this character development that you've had with Fitz. And so I'm not saying it's the complete same for Red Rising, because obviously this is the thinnest thing ever compared to these, but so I think even that will benefit from just having another book and spending more time with them. So I am going to start Morning Star, I think is the next one. Or I can't remember. I think it's Morning Star. I mean, I can tell you right now actually. I think I'm going to start that next. And I'm not sure about, because I usually I would read on the way to work because I've been walking to work. I kind of like the audiobooks idea, But I tried the Ship of Magic audiobook, and Jesus Christ, I am not listening to that. Golden Sun is what I'm going to read next. So get excited. Golden Sun is coming. Iron Gold has a significant dip in the ratings. Not okay. I say significant. It's like 0.2, but on Goodreads that is significant. Because most people just give it a 4 or a 5 and call it a day. So when something is like a 4.2 as opposed to a 4.49, that signifies most people have less fun with it. And obviously, the first book in a series, you can never really count that because it's attracting a much wider audience. So it's very hard to quantify whether or not that's working. But Iron Gold, it seems divisive. So we'll see. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about Red Rising too, is I know that it's a trilogy, and then there's more books, and like I've kind of not had it spoiled, but I feel like it's inevitable to know, like, when people are like, oh yeah, the first trilogy is about, it follows this, and then there's like the sequel trilogy, and they're like, what? They're like, without explaining why the sequel trilogy exists, it's very hard to do that without spoiling the main trilogy. And I'm not saying that I'd like completely had it spoiled for me, but just using some critical thinking, I kind of know what happens at the end of book 3 and then what the sequel is going to be about. But obviously things can change. The lighting. Anyway, I'm going to go back to Diablo. I'm going to make some... Actually, I might make some food. Or get some... I don't know. Acquire a meal. Because it's midday. I do want to go play more Diablo, though. I'm freaking itching for it. It's super fun. Everybody, get around Diablo. Everybody, come on now. It's really fun. I'm playing a... just tell you about my Diablo character. I'm playing a rogue who throws... uses throwing knives, and all of his skills revolve around poison. And I'm having the fucking time of my life. It's so fun. I love having these really concise ideas of what my character is going to be before I go into it, and like, reading through the class and be like, okay, I can see how this is going to work. Because originally, and I still plan on doing this at some point, was going to do a crossbow user. Because I feel like if you want to use a certain weapon, you can build your class completely around that weapon. So like, if you pick up a bow that's good, it's like, it's not actually going to be that good because I haven't built my class around the bow. I built it around the crossbow, and that usually has to do with attack speed, yada yada yada. But all that aside, I do also really want to play a crossbow character, and then there's so much other stuff in the game, and I'm just so excited. It's so fucking good. It's such a good game. Yeah. It was expensive, so it better be good. But yeah, that was my month. I'm going to read, what was it? Morningstar next. Oh, Golden Sun. I'm going to read Golden Sun next. And I'll report back next month. Also, want to watch Spider-Man.